You think you know every detail about the albums that define generations? But what if I told you the legendary cover art for Abbey Road almost showed the Beatles on the peak of Mount Everest? Or that a single fruit on a Velvet Underground album sparked a lawsuit worth millions? The truth is, behind every iconic album cover lies a story of chance, vision, and sometimes chaos. Today we're taking a closer look at those stories, and once you hear them, you'll never look at these covers the same way again. You know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but an album cover can be worth an entire cultural movement. From Nirvana's Underwater Baby to Bowie's Lightning Bolt, these images didn't just sell records. They became symbols of eras etched into our collective memory. But how did they really come to be? Why was a baby thrown into a swimming pool? Why did four men decide to cross the street instead of scaling a mountain? And how can a prism, drawn with almost scientific simplicity, still stop people in their tracks half a century later? In this video, we'll uncover the accidents that became legends, the controversies that pushed art to its limits, and the hidden messages that only reveal themselves if you know where to look. Prepare to see these masterpieces in a whole new light. Never mind, sometimes history isn't carefully planned. It's stumbled upon by accident, and that's exactly how some of the most iconic album covers were born. Take Nirvana's Nevermind. You've seen it. A baby swimming underwater, chasing a dollar bill on a hook. But here's what most people don't know. That baby was chosen in a rush. Photographer Kirk Weddle had originally planned to shoot a water birthing class, but the idea got scrapped. Instead, he threw his friend's infant son, Spencer Eldon, into a pool for a few snaps. The shoot lasted seconds. Spencer's parents, they were paid just $200. No one imagined that image would define an entire generation, or that decades later, Eldon himself would sue the band, claiming exploitation. After months of legal back and forth, a judge ultimately dismissed the case in 2022. The court ruled that Eldon had waited too long to file, and that the image didn't meet the definition of exploitation under US law. Nirvana's team won in the legal sense, but the lawsuit reignited debates about art, consent, and how time can change the way we see an image. What started as a last-minute improvisation became one of rock's most recognizable and controversial images. Abbey Road. Then there's Abbey Road. It looks effortless, four Beatles walking across a zebra crossing, but the original plan was Mount Everest. That's right. Designer Paul Cole suggested the band pose on the world's tallest mountain. Instead, Paul McCartney argued they should just walk outside the studio and get it done in 10 minutes. That decision not only saved them a trip halfway across the world, but created one of the most imitated photographs in music history. And fans noticed details the band never intended. McCartney barefoot, out of step, sparking the infamous Paul is dead conspiracy theory. Sometimes the simplest choices create the deepest legends. The Dark Side of the Moon. And there's, of course, the Dark Side of the Moon. When Pinkfloyd's design team was asked to create a cover, the brief was vague. Something clean, something ambitious, something to reflect light. Designer Storm Thorgerson sketched a prism splitting light into a spectrum, and that was it. No clutter, no band photo, just geometry and color. It became timeless. Proof that sometimes less isn't just more, it's everything. These accidents and inspirations remind us, behind the greatest covers are human choices, rushed, improvised, or brilliantly simple, that turned into cultural milestones. If the last stories showed us how chance can create legends, these next ones prove that controversy can be just as powerful. Some album covers weren't just art, they were statements so bold they shook audiences, sparked lawsuits, and redefined what music visuals could be. The Velvet Underground and Nico. Take the Velvet Underground and Nico. Andy Warhol designed it himself, a simple yellow banana with the words, "Peel slowly and see." And yes, early vinyl copies actually had a peelable sticker. Underneath was a fleshy pink banana, suggestive and shocking for 1967. It was playful, provocative, and pure Warhol. But the story didn't end there. Decades later, a legal battle erupted when Warhol's estate clashed with MGM over rights to the banana artwork. By mid-2013, the parties reached a confidential settlement, and the case closed. The details were never disclosed, but the outcome made it clear. Even the simplest, cheekiest piece of album art can become the center of high-stakes legal drama. Houses of the Holy. How can we forget Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy? If you've ever seen it, you know how unsettling it looks. Naked children climbing strange, rocky terrain. The photo was inspired by Arthur C. Clarke's sci-fi novel Childhood's End, where children evolve into higher beings. Photographer Aubreypowell shot the eerie scene at Northern Ireland's Giant's Causeway, layering multiple images of two child models. Critics called it disturbing. Some countries even censored it. But fans couldn't look away. It was haunting, mystical, and unforgettable. Aladdinsane. And then, David Bowie's Aladdinsane. The lightning bolt across Bowie's face wasn't part of a grand plan. It was a last-minute idea by makeup artist Pierre Laroche. Yet that spur-of-the-moment decision gave us one of the most replicated images in pop culture. From Halloween costumes to fashion editorials, Bowie's bolt became shorthand for rebellion, artistry, and glam. These covers didn't play it safe. They provoked, they unsettled, they blurred the line between music and art. And because of that, they endure. Each one reminds us that creativity isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it's controversial, and that's why it lasts. You see, not every iconic album cover shouts its story. Some whisper. They carry quiet details, subtle symbols, or layered meanings that only reveal themselves when you look closer. Rumours. Take Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. On the surface, it looks whimsical. Stevie Nicks, draped in black, standing beside drummer Mick Fleetwood. But the cover hides a storm of personal turmoil. At the time, the band was unraveling, relationships ending, friendships strained. Yet there they stood, posing together as if nothing was wrong. Stevie's outfit, witchy and theatrical, became a symbol of her stage persona, while Mick dangled wooden balls from his waist, a private joke carried into public view. Fans didn't just see a band, they saw a fractured family dressing their wounds in art. The cover captured tension and resilience in a single frame. To Pimp a Butterfly? Fast forward to Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Its cover shows a group of black men and children celebrating on the White House lawn, standing over a fallen judge. At first glance, it's chaotic, but it's deliberate. A vision of power flipped on its head, a commentary on race, justice, and triumph. Kendrick filled the frame not with celebrities, but with his friends and community, real people, lifted into history. That choice turned the album into more than music. It was a manifesto, immortalized in a single, radical image. 1989, Taylor's version. And then there's Taylor Swift's 1989, Taylor's version. At first it looks familiar. A Polaroid-style shot, pastel skies, handwritten type. But the changes are intentional. Every detail nods to her reclamation of her work, her evolution from pop ingenue to independent powerhouse. For fans, it wasn't just a cover. It was a coded message of ownership, resilience, and growth. A subtle reminder that the art belongs to the artist, no matter how much the industry tries to take it. These covers prove that sometimes the most powerful statements aren't loud. They live in details, symbols, and stories that only fans who care enough to look will ever truly understand. So why do these album covers still captivate us decades later? Because they're more than packaging. They are an identity. A single image can freeze a cultural moment in time and make it unforgettable. Think about it. You don't need to hear a note to recognize the prism on the dark side of the moon, the baby on Nevermind, or Bowie's lightning bolt. These images became cultural touchstones, instantly recognizable across generations. They don't just represent music, they represent movements, feelings, and entire eras. And their influence didn't stop with record stores. Graphic designers, photographers, fashion stylists, and even filmmakers have drawn inspiration from these visuals. The covers we've explored aren't just memories. They're blueprints for creative industries that followed. They remind us that design can be as revolutionary as sound. But maybe the most powerful thing about them is this. They invite us in. They whisper stories, spark debates, hide secrets, and sometimes even stir controversy. And in doing so, they turn passive listeners into active participants in music history. So now it's your turn. Which iconic album cover has stayed with you? Which one made you pause, wonder, or even argue with your friends about what it meant? Drop your favorites in the comments, share the stories you know, and let's keep the conversation alive. Because music history isn't just written by artists, it's remembered by all of us. Thanks for watching.